Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I remember back when I served in the Georgia State Legislature, it was pretty common that when we were on break, to hear a conservative commentator say, well, freedom in Georgia was safe this week because the General Assembly wasn't in session. Unfortunately, that doesn't work at the federal level. Even though the House of Representatives was recessed this week, that did not stop the Democrats or President Biden to slow down their assault on our economy, our liberty, and our national security. Now, during this recess week, Speaker Pelosi made headlines when she made a surprise visit to Ukraine to meet with President Zelensky. Now, trips to foreign countries by members of Congress, they're not unusual. In fact, I've been on several official delegation trips during my time in office. It's also not too unusual to travel to areas of conflict or even hostile areas. But what made this trip unusual is that the standard policy for congressional delegation travel, what we call CODEL, is that these trips are supposed to be bipartisan. But Speaker Pelosi only invited Democrats to accompany her. This type of action not only violates long-standing official travel policy of the House, it reeks of partisan politics during an election year. Now, Speaker Pelosi and her delegation of Democrats were not the first to travel to Ukraine. Over the past several weeks, Republicans have been traveling to Ukraine to go throughout the country, to meet with officials, and to see how American aid is being used in their war with Russia. Now, these trips were not considered official congressional delegation trips because Nancy Pelosi has banned any official travel to Ukraine. So these Republicans have been going at their own expense, making their own travel arrangements and even arranging the travel in Ukraine with public officials, paying for it out of their own pocket. Now, Nancy Pelosi must have been getting pretty tired of Republicans being the ones showing up in Ukraine and meeting with these officials. So she had to make a public showing. This is why she only invited Democrats to go and made sure that the world knew that she was there. Now, one thing about this travel stands out to me. You see, official travel to the U.S. southern border is available for any member of Congress. In fact, the House has even expanded the rules regarding border visits to make it even easier for members to travel there. But yet Nancy Pelosi has yet to travel to the southern border to see the devastating impact that their open border policies are having on this nation and the people of this nation. You know, I'm wondering, maybe her security detail felt it was too dangerous for her to be at the southern border, but it would be okay to travel into a war zone that's Ukraine. During this recess time, I've had the opportunity to visit with several businesses. Now, some of these visits were official to see how their business operates, and then many have just been in my normal course of personal business. But in every instance, I get a chance to see how they're doing their business and maybe even talk to the people who work there or the business owners. But one thing that all of them have had in common is that they say they're very busy and they have plenty of demand for their products or services, but yet they are facing significant challenges. One of the challenges is it's very hard to get products, and they're also seeing a significant increase in the cost of the goods. But the number one issue everyone was facing is they can't get enough help. I, in fact, went to a tire service center in my hometown, and while I was waiting, there were 3 customers that the owner had to turn away. Now, 2 of them needed new tires, but the tires that they needed for their vehicle, it was going to be several weeks before they could even get those tires in. Another customer actually needed mechanical work done on their car, which they had the parts in stock for. Unfortunately, the business owner had to tell them that 2 weeks ago his mechanic quit, and they have been unable to find someone to replace him. After the customer left, I asked the owner about this, and he said that the mechanic didn't quit for another job. Actually, he quit, and his plan was to go on unemployment. So he called the mechanic back and asked him if he would consider coming back to work, but the mechanic had already pawned his tools to have some additional money just to stay at home. You see, this is the impact that the Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, big government socialism is having on everyday hardworking Americans. The latest report shows that there are more than 11 million jobs available in America today. However, with policies like paying people not to work, removing work requirements from federal benefits like food stamps and welfare, and paying off billions of dollars in student loans, it's no wonder it's hard to fill jobs when the government is making it too easy for people just to stay at home and live off the taxpayers' dollars. I'm working with other Republicans on policies that will reward hard work by reducing tax burdens on Americans, bring personal responsibility back to our economy, and reestablish individual freedom and liberties, and also reduce the impact and control the federal government is having over our lives. Even with all this happening, the big news story of the week was the Supreme Court leak of the decision regarding Roe v. Wade, which is really whether abortion is a protected right under the federal Constitution. Now, prior to the Roe v. Wade decision, the issue of whether abortions were legal or not was held at the state level. And for years, many, including myself, have argued that the U.S. Constitution does not give the federal government the power or the authority over this issue, which means the Supreme Court had no constitutional authority to make the decision of Roe v. Wade. Basically, this is the stance of the majority of the justices on the Supreme Court based on these leaked documents. You see, their decision, if they do overturn Roe v. Wade, doesn't mean that abortion would be outlawed nationwide. Basically, it returns the authority back to the states, and each state legislature would then decide the legality of abortion in each state. But the most amazing aspect of this entire issue is the way that the far left and the Washington progressive Democrats are responding to this news. They have become unhinged. They're calling for an increase of the number of justices on the Supreme Court, to impeach the conservative justices, or to immediately pass a federal law that would mandate every state to allow abortions. They've even gone as far as encouraging acts of violence across the nation in protest to this proposed decision. Just like when big tech unfairly censors conservative communications, the Democrats are fine with big tech. But when Elon Musk declares that he's going to return free speech to Twitter, the Democrats lose their mind and have to respond by establishing a government agency to force censorship. This is exactly what we're seeing played out with the Supreme Court. Now, when the court was a majority of progressive liberal Democrats that used the power of their office to push a legislative agenda, the Democrats praised the court. But now that the court is making decisions based on the Constitution, not on politics or cultural change, the Democrats are crying foul, and they're seeking to destroy our form of government because they aren't getting their way now. They're like a bunch of little children who are mad because they're losing a game, and they're either demanding that the rules change in their favor, or they'll just take their ball and go home. Now, the good news is that the more I'm traveling throughout Georgia and across the country, the more I'm seeing that Americans are seeing what's happening, and they're frustrated and tired of the control of the federal government, especially the control the government is having over their lives, their families, and especially their children. Quite frankly, they're ready for change, and they're ready to strip the power and control away from Washington partisans and bureaucrats and return it back to where it belongs, to the people. This is the first and most critical step in restoring our nation to one that is free, safe, and full of opportunity. And believe me, the folks in Washington know this, and it has them shaking in their boots. I believe this is our opportunity to turn things around, but we have to move quickly, which is why we're working on a bold and aggressive agenda to restore our freedoms, to get the government off our backs, and put families back in control of their health care, their children's education, and also to respect the rights of the individual and hold our government accountable. I believe we can do this. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take all of us working together. And it's going to take you continually letting your voice be heard on these issues across the nation, and especially to your elected officials. If we keep our eye up on this cause and not the circumstances around us right now, I know that together we'll restore this nation to one that is free, safe, and full of opportunity. God bless you, and God bless America. Hey, I'd like to hear from you. If you have a moment, tell me what you think about today's podcast. Just use the comment section below.